Greetings and blessings, YouTube. This is John the Jansenist, and this evening I'm going to talk specifically about the theory of evolution, particularly as it pertains to Darwin's theories of natural selection and the origin of species, the descent of man, and also all of the teachings that have since come about after it, which pertain to the question of macroevolution and abiogenesis. Now, the first thing that I must do is I must confess that although I am a very strong proponent of pietism, of the Jansenist persuasion, and with that comes a very rigorous understanding and belief in the doctrines implied in Scripture, that I am actually a converted ex-atheist, and as such I am a former believer in the whole of the naturalistic view of evolution. From there I basically transitioned into being a proponent of theistic evolution, and then from there over time I began to wither away even from that viewpoint and began to go into a sort of skeptical limbo between the divide that is between creationism and evolution. I have not wholly embraced the idea of creationism for a number of reasons. The main one being is that I'm still sorting out certain aspects of my faith, and some of them have to do specifically with the question of where does religion draw its boundaries and where does science draw theirs. My primary influence on this issue and this ongoing debate that I'm having with myself is Blaise Pascal, who, as you all know, is a famed mathematician and also a famed Jansenist who was a very strong believer in the accounts of the Bible and the Christian faith. And his stance, if we read through the Pensées, or the thoughts, as it were, seem to suggest that a wall of separation between science and religion is a necessary one. He was basically concurring with the assertion of Sir Francis Bacon, who was the founder of what we now know as the scientific method. I do not reject the scientific method. I do, however, disagree with some of the results that it has yielded, in part because I think that it has been misused in many cases. My transition out of any consistent view of evolution from the standpoint that is asserted by Darwin and by others that have followed after him has to do specifically with accounts that I was instructed about with terms to the disaster that was the Mount St. Helens eruption. And I have decided to read an article, or an essay, I should say, that was posted by Dr. D. Armand that goes into specifically the problems that we have with issues such as our dating systems, our understanding of soil analysis, and how we go about determining the age of the fossil record. And it reads as such: Mount St. Helens and evolution, the other side of the news. Mount St. Helens eruption has done more to disprove the theory of evolution than any event in history. Prior to the May 18, 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, it was a beautiful, symmetrical, cone-shaped volcano covered by old-growth trees 150 to 200 feet tall. In an explosion the equivalent of 20 million tons of TNT, or 1,500 atomic bombs, Mount St. Helens and the surrounding area was changed forever. And for scriptural context on such events, see the book of Micah, chapter 1, verses 3 through 4. 1/8 of a cubic mile of what used to be the top of Mount St. Helens was blown into Spirit Lake in a matter of moments, raising it 200 feet higher than it had been only moments earlier. Mount St. Helens continued to spew for 15 hours with the force of 400 million tons of TNT, or 30,000 atomic bombs. That is the equivalent of one atom bomb exploding every second for 15 hours straight. It took 3 days for the jet stream to carry ash to the east coast. It had to be shoveled like snow. Street lights turned on automatically in the daytime because the ash blocked the light of the sun all across the eastern seaboard. Geologists used to believe layers of volcanic rock were set apart by time. They shouldn't any longer after the Mount St. Helens eruption. Mount St. Helens proved to the world forever that sediment is laid down in multiple layers in a matter of hours. In one place, 25 feet of sediment was laid down in a single pass of ash flow forming multiple layers. Ash flows 550 degrees Fahrenheit, traveling 200 miles per hour, raging down the sides of the mountain, taking with it 150 square miles of timber in a matter of 6 minutes of time. Over 20,000 rootless trees were deposited in Spirit Lake. The trees became waterlogged and sank in the upright position. Some rested on top sediment, and others were buried deeply in multiple layers. Some were buried lying sideways. All were deposited there in a matter of a few hours. Specimen Ridge in Yellowstone has 27 layers of forest, which scientists claimed were deposited millions of years apart. In fact, there used to be a sign there, maybe it's still there because evolutionists are slow learners, that says as much. The 27 layers of trees in Yellowstone look exactly like those deposited at the bottom of Spirit Lake by Mount St. Helens in a matter of hours. Multiple layers of trees with no roots buried in the same kind of sediment now have been shown that they are laid down all at once. Mount St. Helens eruption is by no means the only evidence for creation and a young Earth. An 80-foot baleen whale was discovered standing on its tail in the Lompoc region of Southern California in Diamantacus Earth, which evolutionist claims takes 1,000 years to form 1 foot deep. Fossils need to be buried deeply and quickly, otherwise they decay or are eaten by scavengers. How do you suppose that whale managed to stand on its tail for thousands of years without decaying or being eaten by scavengers, while all those layers of diatomaceous earth formed years apart? A fish was found in Kansas chalk beds that was buried so quickly it still had another whole fish in its mouth. Of course, evolutionists tell us that chalk layers form separately over long periods of time. Truth is, there are thousands and thousands of what evolutionists refer to as anomalous fossils. I have a huge, thick, hardback book, over 900 pages, called Forbidden Archaeology, filled with accounts of such fossils. The sad thing is that true science would observe facts and form a theory based on those facts. Evolutionists form the theory first and try so hard to make the facts fit their theory. The authors of Forbidden Archaeology said it so well. If one could look at the world without any theoretical presuppositions, conscious or unconscious, one would see nothing anomalous. Trees have been discovered through over 20 feet of sandstone layers. Some trees have been found fossilized upside down through millions of years of evolutionary layers of rocks. According to evolutionary theory, coal was formed 300 million years ago and came on the scene less than 3 million years ago. Yet, fossil human remains have been found in 300 million year old layers of coal in Germany and here in Virginia. A ceramic spoon was discovered in coal beds supposedly 300 million years old. In Montana, a human molar was found in 300 million year old coal. Fossilized human sandal prints have been discovered squishing a trilobite, which evolution teaches did not live at the same time as man. In Oklahoma, an iron pot was discovered in coal 300 million years old. In Arkansas, a bronze bell was found in coal. In Russia, Australia, and 2 states in the U.S., human footprints have been discovered with those of dinosaurs. Coelacanth, or lungfish, once were given as proof for evolution. They were thought to be the missing link between fish and amphibians. That is until an African fisherman caught one off the coast of Madagascar in 1938. Now hundreds of them have been caught. A fish which was supposed to have died out 400 million years ago, and they still look exactly like those in the fossil record. In Alaska, hadrosaur, which is a duck-billed dinosaur, fossils were discovered with protein still in the bone. Protein only lasts for a few thousand years, compared to 67 million years ago when they were supposed to have lived. Stephen Jay Gould is a well-known evolutionist and hates creation, but even he says that creationists are more empirically minded than evolutionists. He charges that Charles Lyell and others outright lied to make discoveries fit their theories. That is the theme of the whole book I mentioned earlier, thus the title, Forbidden Archaeology. The authors of Forbidden Archaeology claim that the main point they are trying to make in the book is that there exists in the scientific community a knowledge filter that screens out unwelcome evidence. They go on to say in their introduction to the book, when we speak of suppression of evidence, we are not referring to scientific conspirators carrying out a satanic plot to deceive the public. Instead, we are talking about an ongoing social process of knowledge filtration that appears quite innocuous but has a substantial cumulative effect. Certain categories of evidence simply disappear from view. There is not a missing link when it comes to evolution. The whole chain is missing. There is tons of evidence for creation and a young Earth, but you won't hear much about it unless you dig for it. Evolution is more akin to religion than science. It takes far more faith to believe in it than it does to believe that God created the heavens and the earth just like he said he did. God gave mankind undeniable proof on May 18, 1980, that vast amount of time were not needed to create things as previously thought necessary. For those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, it is clear that God can do in a moment what evolutionists think would take billions of years. So this is the article, and I've linked to it in the description. Suffice to say, it's pretty convincing. I am not fully 100% in agreement with it yet, but I am still in a state of transition, so this is something that I am going to continue to work on, and I do plan on trying to pick up a copy of Forbidden Archaeology so I can read into this further. So take from this what you will. Obviously, in order to be a good empiricist, which I think every good scientist should be, take all of this with a grain of salt, draw your own conclusions, trust but verify. Check out all of the things referenced, specifically the Mount St. Helens incident and all of the issues pertaining to fossil records that are included in the body of this article. So until next time, in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, God be with you.